Alright, so let's get back into my most watched series here on the channel. No, wait, actually, I meant to say least watched. This is my least watched series here on the channel. More people should watch it. I really like this one. Please, more people watch this. I say as if literally anybody who isn't watching this video could possibly hear me say that. Anyway, we're talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! The Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga. Again, we're still in the absolutely batshit crazy Duelist Kingdom arc. The first arc of the show to focus solely on the card game Duel Monsters. And it's another Yugi duel. It's Yugi's second duel here at the tournament. And this one is bonkers for some of the same reasons as his first duel in the tournament. He doesn't offer his life up as stakes in a children's card game or anything in this one. But it uses some similar mechanics which don't really make a lot of practical sense. And yet it's still super memorable. Like, I still have really fond memories of this duel. And in fact, I think it's better than his duel against Weevil, or Insector Haga. Whatever you want to call him. This one being his duel with Ryota Kajiki, I think is what it is. Or Mako Tsunami in the dub. That freaky fish guy.
I am not a freaky fish guy.
Our heroes have just realized that they're going to be on this island for 2 days, and none of them thought to bring any snacks beyond what they would eat on the boat, which is really going to suck unless they can find something to do about it. Thankfully, though, Jinochi's sniffles from a couple chapters back have entirely cleared up at this point. He was able to use his sense of smell last time to beat Mai, and now he's able to use his sense of smell to detect cooking fish, leading the group to some cooking fish, as well as the fishermen, the aforementioned Ryota and Kajiki. At first, he just seems like some kind of crazy hermit castaway. He gets mad that they're trying to eat his fish, but when he sees that they're also duelists and recognizes Yugi, he allows them to stay. And it turns out that while he was cooking himself dinner, he was also hoping to draw people to this spot. Because just like Insector Haga, he hopes to use the specific environment in this region of the island to defeat people more easily. Except, we see the second time that we meet Ryota in a different tournament, the Battle City tournament, that he does have the Umi, the ocean card in his deck. But like, even more so than Haga's strategy, which very much relied on the forest powering up the defense of his Cocoon of Evolution, Ryota's strategy is 100% dependent on the ocean. Like 100%. His strategy is only viable because he hides his monsters underwater, which makes them not only difficult to attack, in fact, pretty much impossible to attack if you don't have the right kind of attack to use against him, but also, like, seemingly prevents them from being targeted by any special abilities other than ones that could permeate the water. Like, his strategy is almost a purely defensive one, almost a purely technical one, I guess is probably the better way to say it, that involves using the water as a concrete tool. So even if he had won this tournament by using this specific field to his advantage, going into the finals, he wouldn't have been able to do that, and he would have lost anyway. Like, he seems really clever in the moment, but his strategy would have been useless against somebody like Pegasus. That said, he does let them eat with him. They get to know each other a little bit. They even hear about his dream for the prize money. He's going to buy a fishing boat, because his and his father's fishing boat was destroyed in a freak storm several years ago. He's one of those people who believes that the ocean has different moods and even responds to the actions of humans, and that it doesn't like people polluting in it, which I can understand. We pollute in the ocean a lot, and we should probably stop. In fact, I don't think this is just something they invented for the dub. When we see him again in that aforementioned Battle City tournament, if I'm not mistaken, he mentions that his father even died at sea, or something. He has a very love-hate relationship with the ocean, is my point. It's understandable why, in Yu-Gi-Oh! The Abridged series, they, as a goof, had him have kind of a romantic relationship with the ocean, kind of an unhealthy romantic relationship.
At least the ocean will never leave me. Right, Ocean? Why don't you ever answer me, Ocean?
He romanticizes the ocean a lot, is my point. And he can't just be a fisherman who uses, like, I don't know, warrior monsters or something because he likes them. He's a fisherman, so everything has to be about the ocean. And so he uses an ocean-based deck. And as I mentioned before, he hides monsters under the water. The field in this area is 1/2 the ocean and 1/2 wasteland. And this presents the same kind of lore problem as the talk of fields and field power bonuses back in the Haga duel. It's implied that fields are an entirely new concept to the game, being aspects of those special rules that Haga got to look at because he was the winner of that, I don't know, I guess it was like a regional tournament or something back in like the very first chapter of this arc. But more and more, it seems like something was lost in translation, or else Kazuki Takahashi just didn't quite think the explanation through enough, because what had to have been the rule in that rule book was that the environments around the holographic fields would be reflected on their battle boxes and applied as field spells that were constantly active. Looking at this duel against Ryota, it must be true that field spells existed in some form prior to this, because Ryota could not have built this deck prior to having access to the ocean. He just couldn't have. It makes no sense. In fact, his ace card uses the water around it to wash the opponent's monsters away as its special ability. And his strategy is super interesting, hiding until it's time to strike. He even has a monster in his deck which, while it's a vanilla monster in the actual game, has the ability to absorb and neutralize any electricity which finds its way into the water around it, protecting his various sea creatures from their elemental weakness. He's one of the few defensive players in the manga. And in fact, I mentioned he has an ace monster, but it's not like a boss monster that Yugi has to overcome, like what most characters tend to default to using in every single duel of this entire story, because that's just how Kazuki Takahashi tends to write things. In keeping with Ryota's strategy, the boss of this duel is the ocean itself. And Yugi, being the strategist that he is, recognizes that Ryota will try to utilize the ocean in that way, since he doesn't have a proper boss to his deck otherwise. In what seems to be just him powering up a monster, he actually lays the groundwork to trap every single one of Ryota's cards all at once. Playing the Moon card to power up his Silver Fang, a wolf, and leading to one of the most iconic moments in the entirety of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise. Because the moon is there when, I'm trying to remember the name of the monster, like I think they just call it the Leviathan in the manga, but it has like a different name in the card game. I'll just call it the Leviathan here. So I'm pretty sure that's the name they use for it in the manga that I just read earlier today. When he uses the Leviathan's ability to create a tidal wave, it also pushes the water forward. Now, the beach that Yugi's been using for his monsters is flooded, and it floods more than even Ryota expected, because the moon being there created a high tide. So now this field, which normally Yugi would have roughly half access to because he doesn't have any fish monsters, he can't play his monsters in the deep water, is almost entirely water. And one of the underutilized mechanics of early duel monsters in the manga, they don't talk about it as much in the anime, but in the manga, you could actually move your monsters instead of attacking, seemingly anyway. You could move your monsters to an adjacent spot on the board, because seemingly monsters had to be at least kind of nearby whatever they're attacking in order to attack it, right? And so most players would seemingly just kind of default to playing their monsters in their upper zones and their spells and traps in their lower zones so that the monsters would be close enough to engage in battle, right? But now that the water extends to the other side of the board and Yugi can't play any monsters to block that first row, Ryota can advance his monsters forward instead of using them to attack, and he boxes in Yugi's last monster, the giant soldier of stone. But because Yugi raised the tide, allowing Ryota to get so close, he's able to use the giant soldier of stone, whether this is an ability or just a thing that you could seemingly do with these rules in the manga. He's able to use the giant soldier of stone to destroy the moon. Attack the moon is literally the command he gives, and it's so bonkers. It's one of those bonkers memorable moments that got turned into a card years later. And that causes the tide to recede enough that all of these creatures are now beached, and he's able to use the same Curse of Dragon Burning Land combo that he used against Haga to ignite his entire side of the board on fire all at once. And since these are fish and they're already beached, they're susceptible to heat and they're all cooked, and Ryota loses all at once. And they actually part on friendly terms. They've developed a mutual respect for each other. Ryota's not out of the tournament because Yugi only bet one star chip, I think. So I think Ryota still only had his 2 starting star chips. It doesn't matter. The point is Ryota still has star chips. He's still in the tournament. We don't see him again. He gets knocked out at some point later. But he is, at least at this point in time, still in the tournament, still able to pursue his dream. And for once, Yugi and company remain friends with somebody after a duel. Like, Ryota and Yugi are, like, intense and aggressive with each other during the duel itself. But that's just a Yu-Gi-Oh thing, right? They don't actually dislike each other as people. And later on, in that Battle City tournament that I mentioned before, when he battles against Jinochi, you can tell he has respect for Jinochi, too, and they have a really good fight. A really good duel, and develop their own kind of mutual respect for each other as combatants, as Ryota and Yugi did in this chapter, this pair of chapters here. I don't know why specifically Takahashi decided that it would be this guy out of every Yu-Gi-Oh! Antagonist ever who Yugi remained friends with after he fought him. But it's still nice. It's nice to see it. It's not like this never happens ever, but it's rare. Usually when Yugi duels, he's dueling against somebody we're not supposed to like. And it's actually kind of staggering over the years how many of this guy's weird mechanics that he makes use of in this duel get turned into actual cards. There are a few water monsters, for example, including his later signature Legendary Fisherman, which get the ability to become immune to attacks and effects when Umi is on the field. Rather than it being a mechanic in the game, it's just a mechanic on some certain cards. And then there's a trap, a continuous trap that effectively gives all water monsters that ability. There are cards that are based on what the Leviathan can do in the manga and anime. There are 2 updated retrains of the Legendary Fisherman, as well as a retrain of a ritual monster that Ryota uses against Jinochi in Battle City. People really took to this guy's cards. Most of those people seemingly being people who work at Konami, but still, it's pretty neat. And if nothing else, this duel is a really good example of how, for this arc, these super realistic holograms were supposed to make the games more intuitive for the people playing them. If you could be like, hey, I wonder if this thing works like it would in real life, and take the right action to test that, there's a lot of cool interactions you could get from it. And granted, Yugi's the one who does that most of the time because he's the protagonist, and Kazuki Takahashi is specifically writing these situations for him to be able to do that. But it doesn't make it any less cool. Like, I don't have much to say about this one, thematically speaking. There's not a lot here. It furthers the story. Everybody gets fed. The tournament is progressing. Yugi has more star chips now. But it's just a nice, fun, simple 2-chapter almost fillery duel. It's comparably chill to a lot of the stuff that we've gotten, not just so far in this arc, but especially compared to what we're going to get later. And there's so many memorable moments in this one. It's just a lot of fun. As per usual, though, guys, what do you guys think of Yugi's duel with Ryota Kajiki, if you have seen it in any of its many forms. Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else you think would enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out the links to my various social medias, as well as the many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.